As a major research institution, Arizona State University offers the most online bachelor's degree programs, along with world-class faculty and dedicated support. Discover why ASU is ranked #1 in innovation for 9 consecutive years. Tap to learn more.
Pandora makes it easy for you to find your favorite music. Discover new artists and genres by selecting any song or album, and we'll make you a personalized station for free. Download on the Apple App Store or Google Play and enjoy the soundtrack to your life.
Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
You're listening to Haunting History Podcast, the podcast that reaches back into the past to the stories that still haunt us today. Tales of true crime, mysteries, and sometimes even the macabre. Join us as we travel back in time to the people and the lives behind the headlines. Listen as we research the stories that are still haunting those left behind, shining a new light on dark and cold cases. As the saying goes, someone out there knows something. Are you that someone? Welcome back to Haunting History Podcast. I'm your host, Kat.
And I'm Haley.
Our cold case series continues with Kerry Patterson. Today, we are honored to get to share with you an interview we did with Investigator Bob Taft with the Orange County Sheriff's Homicide Bureau. During it, you will hear me mention Campbell, and I wanted to explain who he is and why he comes up by name. It's pretty convoluted, but back in May of 1983, David Richard Campbell was on trial for the murder of several men. During his own murder trial under oath, he said that he believed his friend and associate, a man named William Kim Raber, had killed Kerry. During interviews with police, who were alerted to his statement and followed up by interviewing him themselves, he said that Raber never actually confessed to killing Kerry, but he believed that he did based on the articles he had read about Kerry's disappearance and her remains being found. He ultimately confessed that he knew nothing of Kerry's case personally. He only knew the information that was published in the newspapers. The investigators even went so far as taking Campbell to the site where Kerry's remains were found to see if he showed any recognition or gave any additional information. He did not. Again, in December of 2012, 2 additional investigators interviewed Campbell in prison again to determine if there was any possible involvement in Kerry's murder. Campbell again denied any involvement and said that he had suspected Raber or another man that he was convicted of killing by the name of Fisher, and he said he believed that they or one of their friends were responsible for not only the killing of Kerry, but a girl named Cheryl Gutierrez and another girl named Wendy Clearer. Campbell described himself as a citizen investigator. He believed that he was working as a vigilante to find out who was killing these girls. It was determined that Campbell had no actual knowledge and was doing what he could to gain more attention by bringing up other cases. He was ultimately convicted of killing both men and is now serving a life sentence at the R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility without the possibility of parole. There is no evidence that he had anything to do or has any personal information in regards to Kerry, Cheryl, or Wendy's murder. Next is our conversation with Investigator Bob Taft of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. So when did you first get the case file on Kerry Patterson?
I first began looking into this case in mid-2019.
So it was only a year.
It's been a little over a year, about 18 months.
And how did you get it?
I was contacted by Michelle to say, could you look into my sister's case? I wanted an update on what the status was of her investigation.
So at the time, though, you were the cold case division for the Orange County at the time?
Well, I was the investigator primarily assigned to handle cold cases because I was assigned to a cold case task force.
And how are cold cases typically handled? Like, is it like yearly? Is it bi-yearly? Like, how do you?
I can only speak for my experience, but we have a chronological listing of all the cases. And so, and a brief narrative summary. So normally what I would do is I would pull the summary and I would start reading cases and I would just say, okay, based on the details of this case, there may be some new investigative leads that we could pursue. And then I would go pull the case file.
So you hadn't seen Kerry's file until you talked to Michelle?
I had not seen Kerry's case file. No, I did not.
So how many detectives had it it's been 40 years. So how many detectives just from your department?
I don't know specifically. There may have been others that weren't documented in the case file, but I know there was an inquiry in 1994 when Campbell first said that he knew or he had information on Kerry's murder. And then there was a follow-up in 2011, 2012, and then again in 2014, and then mine in 2019.
Okay, so before we get to that, what made you choose this case for us? I mean, it ended up being Kismet because I knew Michelle, but what made you choose this one?
Because number one, I guess I can relate to the victim and the family in this case because I have daughters of my own, and I couldn't imagine having to live with knowing that something happened to my daughter and I didn't have that final answer. I didn't have closure. So I guess maybe there's a personal aspect to it. I felt a connection in that sense. The other thing after reading the case file is at this point in time, we really don't have any investigative leads. It's a true unknown. So any information that we get from anything that we put out to the public is going to be good information, could provide some sort of investigative lead.
So there's still a chance that there's someone out there that knows something.
Absolutely. I don't doubt that there's somebody out there that knows something.
The biggest thing I think when I'm talking to Michelle and Crystal is they have so many questions going back to when originally Fullerton had the case. How much of the information can you give us that Fullerton had?
Well, I know the primary investigation that Fullerton focused on was that there was information conveyed to Fullerton Police Department that Kerry was likely a runaway.
And why is that? Or what is that based on, I guess, is my question.
There were several individuals that came forward that said either they had seen Kerry after her reported disappearance date. There were other individuals that said they had spoken with her in Cerritos, interacted with her, gave her cash when she was asking for money. And during those conversations that these individuals said that they had with Kerry, she relayed to them that she had run away from home.
Crystal's very adamant about the fact that she knows her daughter didn't run away. She had money on her dresser. She had clothes packed for a trip the next day. I guess I'm questioning what, other than those, did the police just not believe Crystal, I guess? I guess that's my frustration.
I can't speak for that officer at the time. I know that they did conduct an investigation.
When was that, though? That was my question, too. She went missing on the 26th of June.
Yes.
When Crystal originally called the Fullerton PD to file the report, they told her that she had to wait 24 hours to file a report. That doesn't exist anymore, right?
No, not at all.
So,
at least with our agency, for sure. I can't speak for other agencies and what their policies are.
It's immediate when a child goes missing. Okay. And then she said that it wasn't until the next day that she could file a report. And then I'm curious how soon it was after she filed the report that they originally started talking to people. When did they talk to the boys that were last with Kerry? I'm curious because there's references and Crystal kept a whole memory book of every single thing that happened, but she doesn't have dates and times because it was as it was happening. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm just curious, did it take them a week to go talk to those boys that were last with her, or was it within 24 hours?
It looks like it was that same day.
It was the same day.
Yes.
That they went and spoke to the three boys that
the
had
initial investigators went and talked to Crystal and the family and also interviewed the three boys.
I know that from talking to you that the boys were never suspects.
I wouldn't say they were never suspects, but they were definitely persons of interest because they were obviously the last ones to see her alive. I don't know as far as Fullerton's investigation whether they consider them true suspects or not. I know in my investigation at this particular moment in time, I do not consider them suspects.
And the Fullerton police never wrote them down as suspects. They just persons of interest at the time. And they deemed that they were probably not responsible for her disappearance at that time.
There were no indications that they were involved in her disappearance at that time.
I guess the frustration that I hear in Crystal's voice talking to her is that she never got to talk to them herself. She never got to look them in the eye and say, what do you know? Not necessarily accusing them of anything, but you were friends with her, and you were last with her. What do you know? Is there a reason why the Fullerton police, she said the police told her she wasn't allowed to speak to them. Or not allowed. That's wrong. That's the wrong one. They encouraged her not to interfere, not to go.
Correct. Exactly that. because we're dealing with an investigation. And because there were some indications that she may not have been strictly a runaway, that in order to preserve the integrity of the investigation, obviously you don't want family members doing interviews on your behalf or at behest of the police, because it could be that, especially if these boys were involved, I'm not saying they were, or any of these individuals that they talked to, if there was a certain amount of involvement and the family talked to those individuals and got information from those individuals that was pertinent to the investigation, then essentially people of the public know key details of your investigation, and that's never a good thing.
So they weren't protecting the boys when they stopped Crystal. They were protecting the integrity of the case.
Absolutely. I wouldn't see why they would protect the boys specifically from Crystal, but to maintain the integrity of the ongoing investigation.
Do you feel like the Fullerton Police Department investigated this, or do you feel that they took it as a runaway situation as opposed to a kidnapping or a missing child?
I would say they investigated it either way. I would say they were probably more leaning towards Kerry being a runaway than an abduction. And again, I'm basing that on my 2020 perception of investigations, not 1980 perception of investigations.
Well, in one of the articles I read, there was a detective, Nava. It was a woman. I didn't realize it was a woman until recently. She said, she was quoted in an article saying that she doesn't have any regrets with the way that she investigated it. She believes that they did the best. They did what they needed to do. But as far as the family is concerned, at one point, Michelle had said that her mom thought it was being investigated and then found out later that nobody was really doing anything. Was there any point in the investigation that they weren't doing anything?
I wouldn't say there was a point that they weren't doing anything. And again, I'm speaking from my experience, and I've taken a number of runaway juvenile reports as well, is that there are not necessarily clear indications, but you get an instinct about, yes, this individual is a runaway, especially if they have a history of runaway. And a lot of times they'll disappear from like the homes that they're assigned to, and they'll run away, and then they'll be gone a couple hours or up to a day or two, and then they come back. And there's a history of those. So when you take an additional report after you've already taken 8, 10, 12 of those, it's relatively easy to say, okay, this is just another runaway report, and they're going to come back. Again, I don't know what Detective Nava's experience was at that time.
But you do know people close to the case were indicating, aside from Crystal has always, from the very beginning, always said her daughter did not run away. Yes. But there were other people that were involved with Kerry that indicated that she could have run away.
It was a possibility, yes. And I can speculate, in my own experience, nobody knows their kids better than the parents.
Right.
For the most part. So if Crystal was adamant, saying that she's not a runaway, she has a foundation to form that opinion. Just like I know my kids, if something happened and they didn't come home, there's no way that they would be runaways.
Right.
So I would have the same opinion. But from an outsider looking in that doesn't have that foundational base, and other individuals are giving them information that says, yeah, she may be a runaway, I can totally relate to that particular investigator saying, hey, there's a possibility that this individual is a runaway and not an abduction.
So how many people did Fullerton speak to within the first few days of her going missing?
I would say probably upwards of a dozen people.
Who were these people? Aside from the 3 boys that she was with.
They were obviously the family. There were other people that she went to school with, friends from the neighborhood. I think she had a boyfriend at the time, people that are associated with the boyfriend as well.
So a boyfriend other than one of the boys that she was with that day, because...
Correct. She had a boyfriend, a true traditional boyfriend at the time.
Oh, aside from... Because everyone always thought that Danny was her boyfriend, one of the boys that she rode on the bikes with that day.
No.
There was another boyfriend.
There was another boyfriend.
And so he was spoken to also?
Yes.
Michelle can't remember if she was spoken to when she disappeared. Do you know if she was?
I want to say that she was interviewed briefly by Fullerton, but obviously being, 12 years old at the time,
only 12.
She didn't have a lot of information
other than her
the
sister left that day.
Correct.
Did they initially know about the furniture delivery?
Yes.
Do you know if they ever reached out to the company who...
I didn't see anything in the investigative reports that documented that. I don't know if that actually occurred and was just undocumented. But there's nothing written in the case file that says that they were ever contacted.
Do you know if they ever spoke to any of like the construction workers that were around?
I don't believe so.
There's nothing in there about that. So they predominantly stuck to friends and neighbors and family members.
Yes.
And the last 3 people that saw her that day.
Correct.
When did the Orange County Sheriff take on this case? Like originally it was only Fullerton, correct?
Correct. It was originally only Fullerton, and we weren't brought in until the remains were recovered in Tonner Canyon, because that's unincorporated area of the county.
And that's how the Orange County Sheriff got it?
Yes.
And before I go there, and I don't know why I didn't ask this before I even asked that, were there any suspects in Kerry's case? I know that there were people that they talked to, but did the Fullerton police have any suspects or persons of interest that stuck around for that 6 months from the time she disappeared until the time that they went back to, I guess, like someone that stood out?
No, not at that time.
So the boyfriend was cleared, the boys were cleared, friends. I mean, they had even said at one point that they had switched Kerry's school because girls were jealous. Like one girl had ripped a necklace off her. Were all those girls spoken to? Like,
I don't believe so.
no. So there was no suspects. When her body was found, when her partial remains, that's the worst part. It's not even all of her. It was only parts.
Correct.
Was there anybody they went back to immediately?
No.
They were starting over.
Yes.
Like it started
from scratch.
It went from a missing person, likely runaway, to a homicide.
Yes. Because Kerry wasn't identified until, I think, mid-January. So they were recovered December 27th, and mid-January is when she was finally identified.
I hate that Crystal called the police department and said, is there any chance this could be my daughter? And they're like, well, I don't know. Ask the coroner. Like, is that normal?
I would say, and again, based on my experience, I would say no, that's not normal. But obviously it's what led to her investigation. So it was pivotal.
Right.
She took it upon herself to call and inquire.
Yeah. Wait, can we go back and talk about the fact that people said that they saw her and gave her money?
Sure.
Who were these people? Were they people that knew Kerry very well?
There were some that they did a press conference after Kerry disappeared. And
when was that?
I want to say probably in July timeframe.
So almost a month after she disappeared.
Well, she went June 27th.
26. Oh, 26. Okay.
So at some point, I would assume early in July, there was a number of newspaper articles, and I think it was even Crystal that initiated the press conference. And then they started to receive calls on their tip line that reported people interacting with Kerry after she went.
Oh, so these were not people the police originally spoke to. These were people that called a tip line?
Correct.
How credible were these people?
I don't know.
I picture I don't know, but I would think that, and if you don't have this yet, maybe you guys should institute this, is that when they're taking notes on interviewing someone and like to have a scale of 1 to 10, like how credible is this person? I mean, no, it's an opinion, but if I told you someone was really credible, you'd be more likely to believe that what they said. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it's frustrating. In hindsight, it's very frustrating to know that people said, I gave Kerry money, I spoke to her, she told me she ran away, but the person...
There's no way to make sure that actually happened.
Yeah, like how credible was that person?
Correct. And I can speak from an investigative standpoint, and again, on my experience, that regardless of who provided the information, you don't know the credibility of that information until you do some investigation on it.
So did they do that? Did they follow through, I guess?
They did with some, and I'm assuming not with others, because some were documented in the reports and others were not.
So there were actually other people saying that they had seen Kerry.
I would say they probably received maybe 10 or 12 of these calls.
That's a lot.
That said that they had either seen her or they came across people that looked like her, or I think there was 2 or 3 that definitively said that, yes, I talked to Kerry and I knew Kerry, so I knew it was her. We talked, we interacted. I gave her money. She said she had run away from home.
Do you have the dates for those?
I can look.
Because I'm curious, like how long after she disappeared? I think after
I want to say all the way up and through August was one of the latest ones.
And that all fits in. If she survived past that day that she disappeared, it still fits into the timeline of the coroner of her remains, right? The coroner had said that it was between, the remains are 6 months to a year and a half old.
Correct.
But he could be off by how much? A couple months?
I don't have any expertise in how to determine the age of remains.
But it doesn't have to be 6 months. We just because the coroner said 6 months to a year and a half, we're not saying,
Correct.
she died that day.
Absolutely. It looks like many of these were dated in early July.
So they had seen her after June even, in
yes.
July. Did Fullerton, before we get to what the Orange County Sheriff's Department did Fullerton have any theories after that of where she could have gone if she was a runaway? Like, did any of the people call in with tips like, I saw Kerry, she was with so-and-so?
Not individuals. All of the reports came in saying that Kerry was alone. They saw her in the area of Cerritos, which is where she had lived prior to moving to Fullerton. So, just putting on my investigative hat, they probably thought that she went back to her old neighborhood in Cerritos.
And she probably couldn't have done that if what the boys... Now, correct me, I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong. The boys, in all the interviews that I've read, said that they dropped her off at Park and... Pioneer. And she wanted to go home and clean her shoes. And she might go to the horse stables later.
Correct. Their story never changed.
So if she ran away, she didn't have that intention when she was walking away from those three boys.
Don't know what she was thinking at that point.
Did her friends drive? Did her boyfriend drive? That was the other question too. But
he probably would have been around the same age
as she was. So probably not a driver. I guess I'm confused at how she went from Parks and Pioneer and ended up in July in Cerritos, right?
Correct.
In Cerritos. How did that happen? Is there any theories on how that could have happened? If the police thought she was a runaway, they had to have some kind of theory of how she went from Parks and Pioneer and those three boys to Cerritos in July. Like how?
Yes, absolutely.
Is there any theories that you've seen?
There isn't anything documented in the reports. I mean, obviously we can speculate as to she may have called somebody from the neighborhood and said, come pick me up, and brought her there. Again, the other unanswered question would be well, where would she stay? Is she staying with friends? You think if she was staying with friends that the mom would have come forward and said, oh yeah, Kerry's here staying with me.
Right, don't panic.
None of that ever happened. Nobody ever reached out to Crystal and said, oh yeah, Kerry's here with my daughter or anything like that. So,
one of the interviews I read said the boys had told the police that when she got to the ice cream parlor, she told them someone had followed her. Is that in the file at all?
I do remember reading that. I don't specifically recall if that was in the Fullerton reports or not, but I do remember reading that information.
No, it could have been in the article I read.
It may have even come from one of the boys' interviews.
That said that she was being followed.
That came well after the initial incident. It may have come out during their interviews in 2011, 2014.
1994.
Correct.
Anything.
Well, the boys weren't interviewed in 1994.
How often have the boys been interviewed?
I want to say the initial investigation, they were contacted in 2011, 2014, and I spoke with them both here in 2019, 2020.
So I guess I keep dwelling on the last three boys that saw her because I think for the mom, for Crystal, that she never had the chance to look them in the eye. And for whatever reason, that sticks with me because that's the last people that saw her. Well, now we don't really know, but that was the last people she believed who saw her daughter alive. Is that normal for people to kind of hang on to that? I mean, in your experience?
I would say yes. And it's a perfectly natural reaction. It's very common, obviously, for the last people to see someone alive, that they're going to be a focus of the investigation early on. And
the focus of the family, like even just to have contact with that person. You're the last person to see my daughter. Like, I need you to tell me, you know what I mean? Even if it's the same thing over and over again. I think, I guess for me, I can see how it is. I'm just curious if that's a normal reaction in your experience with the other cases, is the last person kind of sticks
Well, that would be an obviously starting point of the investigation.
Right.
I would think, if not the starting point, then probably within the first aspects early on of the investigation, that they would be a focal point, shall we say.
Okay.
The other thing, too, is if I were to conduct that same investigation now and I was the investigating or the lead agent on the case, I probably wouldn't have Crystal talk to the boys either.
No.
No.
Because there's a lot of energy and emotion with a mom.
Correct.
Tell me again, when did the Orange County Sheriff's Department get the case? I'm sorry, I asked you. And
Her remains were recovered December 27th of 1980.
So they did get it as far back as that.
Yes.
Okay, so what was the first thing that the Orange County Sheriff's Department did? Did they go back and re-investigate, re-interview all these same people again?
They did contact many of the same individuals. However, we were a little bit delayed because she wasn't identified until January.
Right.
So we didn't know that this was related to Kerry's disappearance out of Fullerton until a month after her remains were discovered.
So 7 months later, you guys are investigating something that could have happened 7 months prior.
Correct.
So is there anyone that stood out to the Orange County Sheriff's Department? Did you guys go back and talk to the boyfriend again and the three boys and the friends and the people who said that they saw her and gave her money?
Yes. They
All
went
those
and
people
re-interviewed all those individuals, and there was none of those individuals stood out as a viable suspect at that time.
In 1994, and this is how many years? I can never do math.
I was born 1994, so
Okay.
try a little harder. How old am I?
Well, I'm 26 years. So 1994 was when we keep bringing up Michelle in the conversation I had with her, brought up Campbell, what was his full name again?
David Campbell, I
David
think.
Campbell, who he wasn't technically a serial killer, correct? I mean, he killed two people, or did they think that he killed a lot more than that?
Well, he's been convicted of two, I know, and he's suspected in a third.
Is that quantify a serial killer?
I think it's three or more. Let's
look at her, because she probably knows.
I actually don't know.
You really
I
don't?
would assume if you kill more than one person, then you should be deemed a serial killer.
You
So
get
I
the
don't know.
title?
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is with Campbell, Kerry does not fit his MO. He killed men, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But he claimed in 1994 during his trial that he killed Raber, which his name was William Raber. Because he believed William Raber killed Kerry.
Well, his initial testimony was that Raber had told him that he had killed Kerry Patterson. And so he thought that there was some similarity between the way Kerry's remains were found and the way that Raber said that he was going to kill Campbell. So apparently Campbell made the leap of, oh, this is how Kerry's remains were found. This is how he said he was going to kill me. So he must have killed her. So I'm going to kill him before he kills me.
Okay,
That was his thought process.
Wow. And then, see, I didn't realize that. So he killed Raber because Raber was a threat to him. But he's not a reliable. He was convicted of 2 murders, and
Correct.
both of which he accused both of them of killing Kerry. But did William Raber kill anyone?
Not that we know of, no.
No.
There's no indications that he had killed anyone.
And the other, there are a lot of girls who went missing in the 1980s. I mean, honestly, I've personally done 4 stories on people who have been missing in literally 1980, and there were Wendy Clear and Cheryl
Gutierrez.
Gutierrez.
They didn't come up during his trial. During his subsequent interviews with investigators, he said that he was involved with the investigation that apprehended the individuals responsible for those.
Is there any similarities between Wendy, Cheryl, and Kerry?
Well,
I couldn't find a lot.
we
on
don't know
Wendy.
because we don't know what the circumstances were behind Kerry's abduction. We have no idea.
But
what
Wendy was
transpired.
found in
Orange.
In Orange.
Correct.
Her remains were near Santiago Canyon Road, right?
No. She was found off of Bond, I believe,
that's right.
in
Over by
Orange.
Santiago Middle School or something. There's a middle school over there. But she wasn't found months and months and months later.
No, she was found.
Her body was found.
Within a day or two.
Within a day. And then Cheryl, I don't know that I couldn't find any information on her. So the Orange County Sheriff's Department never connected those 3 together. The only connection with those 3 was because of Campbell.
Correct.
and Campbell is not reliable. Now, you listen to the audio of the interviews because the Orange County Sheriff's Department actually sent someone or two detectives to prison to interview Campbell to determine if there's any reliability or any authenticity to his claim about Kerry Patterson.
Campbell has been extensively interviewed. He was interviewed by Fullerton detectives as well, and he's actually taken out of custody and taken to the location where they thought that he had disposed of one of his victims' remains. And he was also taken to the location where Kerry's remains were found to see if he had any reaction as to if he was familiar with the area or stir up any emotions in him, and it did not.
So there's probably no connection to what Campbell brought up about Kerry or anything else. It's not reliable or credible.
To me, it seems very far removed. The thing about Campbell was he had a very good memory, and he would spend a lot of time reading the newspapers, and he knew the details of these abductions inside and out. So when he was questioned years later as to, possible involvement, he was very detailed. But if you go back and research, a lot of that information was available in the press and was put out in news-related articles. And he just simply retained that information. And
he called himself a citizen investigator?
He did call himself a citizen
investigator. So he claims that he was trying to rid the world of these other people. But the two people that he was convicted of killing, there's no evidence that they ever killed anyone.
No.
What is this case going to come down to? It's going to come down to someone
giving definitive information that leads to a suspect, or at some point it may actually have to come to a confession.
I guess I have sort of a bleak outlook. If Kerry disappeared that afternoon and followed the statistics of majority of the time people are killed within the first 3 hours of being abducted, the chances are people didn't see anything. But if the Fullerton police were correct in their, not necessarily assumptions, but in the information they were receiving, that she was a runaway and she was still alive in July and getting money from people in Cerritos, someone knows something. Someone other than, I guarantee everybody didn't see that press conference and everybody didn't come forward. So you're saying there were 3 probably credible witnesses who saw her, relatively credible, right? I said they gave her money.
If that story is credible, yes. Then obviously they interacted with her after the date of her disappearance. Again, I don't know the credibility of that information. The thing of it is my immediate questions was, if she's a runaway, okay, who's helping her?
Somebody had to help her.
Somebody had to help her. She had to have a place to stay. Somebody had to feed her.
She had to get from Fullerton to Cerritos.
Correct.
Like, just the initial beginning of her running away.
What are the odds of that? To be honest, are we like at 50-50?
I won't put a number on anything, because I think if you put a number on it, you're kind of biasing your outlook on something. So I simply don't know, and I'm open to any possible information.
I personally don't believe that she was a runaway.
You don't?
I don't know.
She was abducted that day?
Yeah, I don't. How would she have gotten a plan together for someone to come pick her up? She didn't have a cell phone. She couldn't be like, "Oh, I'm done at the ice cream shop. Come pick me up on this corner."
No, but I was thinking this scenario that those boys dropped her off, like they were going home, and someone was coming over to her house from Cerritos that did drive. If she was hanging out with the wrong crowd, is there any indication that she was hanging out with like a rougher crowd or an older crowd?
Not that I've seen in the reports, no.
So she may not have had any friends that were driving.
Correct.
I guess.
But even then, that's what I'm saying. She didn't have a cell phone to be like, "I'm done doing what I was doing earlier. Come pick me up, and I'm going to start my runaway excursion." But
she could have been walking home, and she could have had a friend drive up and go, "Hey, I was just coming to see you. Come with me." And then it got too late for her to go home. She would get in trouble. So she just stayed out, and then she was staying somewhere where she wasn't safe. I guess I almost not for any reason other than I feel like there's more of a chance that someone saw something. If that scenario is accurate, that say she was walking home, got to in front of her house, and an old friend pulled up in front of the driveway and said, "Hey, come with me." And then she got in the car and goes, okay, I'll go with you, but I need to be home before my mom gets home. And then it got 5 o'clock and it got 6 o'clock. And it was like, crap, I can't. I'm going to be grounded. I'm not going to be able to go anywhere tomorrow. So I'm not going home. What's the point? And then she stayed out. There's more of a chance that there's someone out there that knows something. I guess that's my hope.
Well, I don't doubt that there's somebody out there that knows something regardless of what the initial
Either
situation
way.
was. If she was a runaway, somebody knows that she was a runaway because the things we talked about. Somebody had to assist
Help
her
her.
or aid her or do
Right.
something. The other side of the coin is if it's an abduction, they always say that you can't keep a secret forever. Whoever may have been involved in this potential abduction, my belief, it's not their first occurrence.
Rodeo,
Like
or
they
their
just didn't
last.
wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm going to abduct somebody off the street. And for them to do it without raising suspicions, there's a certain aspect of experience
That went with
regards to
that.
And over the years, it's very possible that whoever was responsible for this said something to someone about it.
Talked about it.
Yes. And they may not have given a name or a location or a time frame. They may have simply said, I had taken a girl and, brought her up to Tonner Canyon and
Left her there.
And left her there or assaulted her. And
Is there a reason?
whatever the situation may be. And then at the time, whoever they told that to didn't put the pieces of the puzzle together. But maybe if we lay out the entire story, they can be like, oh, that sounds like when
Maybe that was like, yeah.
Do you have an opinion of it being someone that she knew or a random person?
I can't speculate. I just simply don't know. Obviously, it would be easier if it was somebody that she knew because she'd feel comfortable getting in the car. But it's just as likely that
She was grabbed.
she was abducted off the street. Yes.
Yeah.
And for the record, I prefer the idea that and it's not the runaway thing because I don't think she ran away. I think she would have been smart enough to take money with her. But as far as being a runaway where people gave her money and all that stuff, I could see, I guess, not a runaway, but like an opportunity. Someone picked her up and she was going to go run somewhere and then it got late. Like she didn't purposely run away.
True.
You know what I mean? That it just happened.
Spiraled out of control.
It spiraled out of control.
Right. And
I don't believe that she ran away. I don't believe that. I don't believe she ran away.
But I just think we would have that information. I think someone would have come forward and been like, oh, yeah, I picked her up. She stayed at my house that night.
Just like a friend, like a mom, if she was staying with a friend, like where's the mom in that house?
Absolutely.
That
yes.
didn't call Crystal and say your kid's here.
Yes. And after all this time,
Hasn't come
knowing
forward.
the situation as it turned out, hasn't come forward to say, oh, yeah, she ran away and she stayed with me for X number of days.
That's the specific reason why I don't think it was a runaway with someone that she knew. Because I think it would have gotten back to her family.
At some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I don't think that she ran away purposefully. I think that if it did happen, it was something that spiraled out of control.
And again, I'm just thinking out loud. And from when I did it when I was young, like, oh, I'm going to run away. It was a spur of the moment thing.
Yeah.
And you just kind of put some things together. Or didn't even put anything together. You just went over to your buddy's house or whatever. I'm running away.
Yeah. Or
For
I'm going to
her
get in trouble
to-
for leaving my sister at home by
Right.
herself.
For her to have run away for an extended period of time requires a certain amount of planning.
And there was
It's
no
not
planning.
something that you're just going to do spur of the moment.
So I guess that takes me back to the original police officers ever believing she was a runaway. Like, I feel like in some ways I get that they had people the detective. I get that there were credible friends or whatever saying that, oh, she could have run away. And the police had Crystal saying, no, she didn't. And I get that they might have had it in the back of their head, but I still feel like the investigation wasn't handled properly from the beginning because A, the mom was saying no, she didn't, and B, there was no planning involved. Her stuff was packed to leave with her friend the next day. Her money was still there. So the police should have followed every single lead, and would that have changed the outcome?
Sometimes I wish I had a crystal ball and I'm able to look back into the past. Just me thinking out loud based on what you just told me. The fact that, she said that she was going to visit with a friend the next day and had a bag packed and she was ready to go. Playing devil's advocate in that thing, she's like, oh, well, that's her plan right there. She's planning to run away. She's already got her stuff packed. She just left a day early. So,
But she didn't take her stuff. Her stuff
correct.
was
She
still
didn't take her
there.
stuff. She didn't, or maybe the plan was that they were going to come back and get it, or
And then
maybe
they
when
got
mom or
too
dad are
late.
at work, or
Yeah.
who's
And
to
then
say? There's a number of possibilities.
And then I just don't see at 15 you hang out with like your group of boyfriends and not saying something to them. Like a 15-year-old doesn't have the kind of control to be like, oh, I'm not going to tell this secret that I'm going to run away later
Yeah.
to these boys. Like
Sure.
she would have said something.
Yeah, just for drama purposes as a 15-year-old girl. I mean, we've been there.
Yeah.
To be dramatic. If there are people that want to help, I mean, I know that people reach out to Michelle all the time when there's a newspaper article and things like that. What can they do? Just call you? And
Yes, absolutely. They can call me. There's a Orange County We Tip line. Unfortunately, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there can be completely anonymous.
So We Tip is anonymous, or they can call you directly if they have any information. And no information is too small.
No, absolutely not.
There could be something that someone says, something that they don't even realize is significant. Could
Absolutely,
be
yes.
100% significant in this case.
Just to give you an example, we did the article on Kerry last December, and I had a number of individuals call, and there were some that were some pretty interesting investigative leads. And unfortunately, when we tried to pursue those individuals disappeared, and they no longer cooperated. So
Why is that?
I wish I knew.
So those people, have you tried to reach out to them again?
I have.
And they
it's
won't.
just no luck. And
Really?
unfortunately, they're not local. I mean, they had been local back in the day, but they live
not
out of
local
state
anymore.
now. So,
Significant enough that you could contact their police departments or sheriff's departments? And
we did. And we still
Really?
didn't get any luck.
that's how far it went?
Yeah.
And you can't tell us what those...
No, just because that's one of those things that we like to keep the
Close.
integrity of the investigation.
Okay.
But, I mean, obviously, if this reaches that same type of audience, people, maybe not necessarily related to this particular incident, but, I lived in the area and I experienced this, or I saw this, or I...
Could lead to
could
solving
lead to-
another case.
Absolutely, yes. Well, not necessarily another case, but...
Just help connect dots.
Correct. And at this point, you don't know what you don't know. So if somebody comes forward with information, you'd be like, oh, yeah, if that piece of the puzzle fits. And then once you have that piece, it could lead to another piece, another piece, another piece.
So no information
So-
is too small.
No,
No, nothing is
absolutely not.
insignificant.
No.
So, okay. Thank you.
Sure.
If you have any information regarding the disappearance and murder of Kerry Patterson, regardless of how small you think your information is, please call Bob Taft at the Orange County Sheriff's Department at 714-647-7045. Or you can anonymously contact Orange County Crime Stoppers at 1-855-847-6227. That's 1-855-TIP-OCCS.